One, and we're recording. Hello, I'm Bryce. With me today is Joshua Desha. He's a business and sales coach and consultant. It's a very, very great opportunity for you guys to be able to learn from someone who has an extreme amount of experience. We were talking before this, like, how many hats have you worn over the years? Like, how can we describe everything you've done, you know?
Oh my gosh. Well, so I've been part of corporations. I've owned my own business. I tell the story of my sales career and my business career. I think I failed 14 or 15 different times before finally realizing how to do all this stuff. So huge failure would be one way to describe my career up until a certain point. Extremely blessed to have found a way to take the talents that I have and eventually know how to use them to create a career.
Okay. Yeah, we're going to get into that because I really want to know what failure means to you and really see how that looks. So, like, what were you doing before you got into sales and business coaching?
So before I got into business coaching, I was in the insurance business. So was in the insurance business from 2007 for about a decade. And I loved it. The insurance business really is where I learned eventually how to do business, how to talk to business people, how to live. I mean, it sounds weird with the insurance because insurance is such a boring subject for so many people, but that industry taught me so much about myself, taught me how to fail, how to fail just brilliantly, spectacularly, and pick myself up and then do it again and do it better. So I was in the insurance business beforehand and loved it. Before that, my wife and I had a mortgage company near Austin, Texas. It was a mortgage brokerage. Then you had the difficulties of 2005, 2006 leading up to the big failures and everything. That's kind of when I slowly transitioned out of that and into insurance. So,
okay. So can you talk about like the early days of, your insurance? You said you made a lot of failures. Can you just if it's not too painful for you, like, what does that mean?
Absolutely, positively falling on your face, feeling as though you got punched by Mike Tyson. Wow. Kind of failures, right? Again, going into the insurance business, not knowing really how to do business, not knowing how to sell to people for real, right? Not knowing how to create deep, meaningful connections, not knowing how to lead, hell, not even knowing how to manage. Being one of those guys, I always had the FOMO, fear of missing out, fear of missing an opportunity. So always jumping to the next thing for fear that you were going to miss the big thing. And then spectacularly, I mean, like with July the 4th, extravagance, failing in front of everyone. And when I say fail, it's funny. A lot of people talk about failure in a sense that you don't ever fail. You just stop trying or whatever that is. No, I personally believe you do fail. And we fail a lot in our lives, right? Our life, the timeline is, to us, it's long. In the universe, it's short. But think about how many different things you're going to do within your lifetime. You're not going to win at everything. And by the way, if you set out to win and you don't win, you lose. That's failure, right? So to me, you fail a lot, and that's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing in the moment, but it's not a bad thing in the long term, because I took those 13, 14, 15 failures and I came up with a process that I started to implement with everything I did. And then eventually, didn't mean I don't fail anymore, but it's not July 4th failure anymore. And when I do, it's not destructive. And when I do, I learn something quickly and I can move on and do better. So that's kind of what I mean by failure.
Okay. So right now, who do you like to work with nowadays?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I really like working with people who have come to a place where they know that what they've been doing isn't going to work anymore. And it sounds very vague, but when you're talking about consulting and coaching, there's a couple of stages of the clientele. You have not failing yet, but you can see as the coach that they're about to hit a wall. That person is difficult to work with, because when you haven't hit a wall, you don't know it's about to hit. You have no reason for help, right? You don't need help. The person who hits their head for the first or second or third time, but they're still able to kind of get up, they can go around it. They still think their processes work. But the person who has hit their head so many times in spectacular fashion where they go, holy crap, I need it now. That person is really easy because they stick out a hand and say, hey, help me. When you're a coach and a consultant like that, the reason that those people are good is that no coach, as a coach, your job is not to give answers, right? My job as a coach is not to tell you, hey, in the next 3 months, you need to do this, this, and this. My job is to give ideas. My job is to ask you questions to determine where you are and if the track that you're going on is the appropriate track. But it's not for me to decide based upon my own frame of mind, my own backstory, whether or not that is the right thing for you. It's up for you to decide whether or not that's the right way to go. So as a coach, my job is to be there along the way, to guide you, to ask you questions that allow you to understand better who you are and where you're going. Mm-hmm. Okay. And so for me, the person who is best for that is the one that says, oh crap, I don't know it all. I need some help. Okay. And it takes a special person to be able to say that, by the way.
Yeah, that's true. So let me ask you this. So this is a weird question that, a lot of people have asked me over a long time, but I want to get your perspective. If the person's at rock bottom, is that rock bottom mentally or is that rock bottom financially?
Well, it depends on the individual. Right? I mean, sometimes rock bottom financially is rock bottom mentally if they have been hunting and searching and define success as some sort of financial dollar amount, right? Sometimes the people that have hit rock bottom are doing amazingly well business-wise, but their family's falling apart, right?
Yeah.
Well, eventually the family falling apart hurts their business side, their sales side, and it hurts them financially. So it kind of depends on the person and where they are right now at that point. Rock bottom, all that I know from that point is they are now at a point where they know they can't do it themselves. Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, and it's interesting because so many people get into business as an entrepreneur because they want to work for themselves. But the ones that are really successful get to a point where they realize that they own it, but they can't do it themselves. And so they kind of come full circle within their own company. So, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, that does. Yeah, a lot of people ask me, they're like, why would you hire virtual assistants when you can do everything yourself? I'm like, because I can fly when I got other people, The only reason I was asked about the rock bottoms, because how can they, sometimes you catch someone who's in a rock bottom financially and they can't afford to pay you. That's why I was like, that's what the question was about. What do you do then? Do you offer scholarships, or how do you handle that?
Yeah. Well, you do a couple of things. One, I've had people reach out to me after a couple of years of lurking and seeing whether it's posts or work that I do on social media or webinars I put on or work in the community and say, hey, you've been coaching me for the last 2 years. I appreciate that. So everything you do as a business person, as a coach or consultant, really is of value to that person anyway. When the person comes to me though, and they say, hey, I need help financially. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know how to do this. Look, it's difficult for a coach because there's a fine line. What you do and the value you bring from a one-on-one level is valuable. But you also come to times like we're in right now, where I'm giving away more and more of what I do right now because that's just what the situation demands. I know that there are people who can afford it. There are people who do call me and say, hey, I need this package right here. This is the package that will help me. Those things happen. So it allows me to have the freedom to do some, if you want to call it pro bono work. You also have the ability, doing what we do, to do more group coaching sessions, to do more group webinars, right, that offer value, not the kind of value you would get in a one-on-one scenario, but enough to give them something to help pick them up to a point where then maybe they can afford it at some point. I learned a long time ago, though, man, that I could go and scrap and claw and try to get every dollar that I can get. And a lot of people do it, and they do very well. I've been there, man. I've been at rock bottom. You know, we grew up with no money. I know what it's like to struggle. And you know what? I can give some of this stuff away. And I'm not so egotistical to think that I'm the only place they can get it.
Yeah.
Right. So if that's the case, they can either get it from me and let me give it to them, or they'll go online and Google it and find it somewhere. Right. I mean, let's be real. None of this stuff is 100% the first time they've ever heard it. So I don't know. I give more away now than I ever have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's a really, it's a cool battle, because we have the opportunity to be able to do that more and just share more. So it's kind of like someone comes on the phone like, hey, you know, I would love to be able to help you out, but I've given you every single step that you need in the last, 200 videos that I did. Just go put them in order.
Well, and yeah, because it's interesting, because you're right. I guess it was probably 3 or 4 years ago. Yeah. And I kind of came to this conclusion myself that, again, growing up with no money, I mean, really, we had nothing. To the point where we were married then, my wife and I, and we had no money. And then all of a sudden something clicked and we had money. And it was understanding that I'm going to be in the same situation at some point, probably, in my lifetime, where I'm going to need something of someone else. That the minute I stopped worrying about money, the minute I stopped worrying about whether or not I was going to have paying clients or people buying my services or products, it's amazing how it works. When I started to give without expectation, the money came.
Yeah.
And so, and again, I'm not saying I'm a Christian, I'm a believer, so I have different reasons for thinking what I believe. But in general, you can look back over time with people who succeed. The people who succeed the most tend to be the ones that give the most. It's crazy how that works, right? And so if that's the case, I keep doing it. And when push comes to shove, if someone can't afford it and I give them something of value, they almost always try to figure out how to make things whole. And so I don't worry about it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. One of my clients, she had stopped, a couple months ago, and now that the thing has happened, she needs to make some money. She was like, "Hey, can we get back into this?" I was like, "Okay, cool." Paid me the money. Immediately got 2 clients for $1,000 each. And I'm like, you put it out, then it comes back. Come on, guys, let's do this.
That's right. There you go. Especially if you're the one helping them bring it, right?
Yeah, it's.
But it is true. I mean, think about it. You talked about virtual assistants earlier. Mm-hmm. When we do business consulting for young startup companies, one of the very first things that they all struggle with is, when do I bring in an assistant, right? Well, it's chicken or egg. What comes first? The money to be able to afford the assistant, or the assistant that allows me to go out and sell more to make money to afford the assistant?
Yeah.
I'm not a blanket statement person, so I won't say always, but almost always bringing in that assistant pays for itself. And so to me, almost always, when I go and decide I'm just going to go help this person, I'm going to give, believe me, I love money. I mean, let's don't get me wrong, but when I decide to do that, it always comes back in spades. So I feel comfortable continuing that.
Here's a question that has been popping up the last couple of weeks, or I guess the last couple of weeks, right? Sometimes the people who I work with, or who potentially watch my stuff, right, the particular that I'm in, they have hangups about money. So they want to be able to help people, but they don't want to be seen as like grabbing money. How would you advise me to kind of tweak my message to really share that it's not about the money, it's a byproduct of the amount of help that you're giving and the amount of people you're helping? How would you have me
So,
like?
so are you asking the question in general or based upon the times that we're in now with this coronavirus stuff?
In general.
Okay. And then the question is, how do you ask for the money?
No. How do I, so sometimes in my video message,
Yeah.
right, I talk to people who are, more life coaches.
Uh-huh.
And some of them get hung up whenever you talk about either the phrase getting clients, because they associate that with only caring about money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And by the way, that's also because most life coaches are not salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I think that there's an art. We were talking before we started recording, we were talking about LinkedIn and how LinkedIn works. And I think it's very appropriate to discuss that, because the best way to do business in general, especially on a place like LinkedIn, is to be able to sell without selling. So when you're talking to a coach, for instance, they don't want to be seen as a salesperson. They want to be seen as a coach. They coach. Other people sell. They don't sell. So they're worried about getting clients, going out and finding people, signing people up, and that sort of thing. And I get it. You don't want to be seen as a scumbag, as a hack, as someone who's merely trying to sign up a client, not to help them, but to make money. One, by the way, everyone that you coach knows that you're doing it for profit, right? That's the first thing. So you have to, by the way, you have to teach that person that there's nothing wrong with that. And every one of your clients expects that.
Yeah.
So it's okay to talk about that. Two, I think you have to learn the art of storytelling as a means to sell, right? So instead of having, crazy Mattress King commercial with the guy on top of the mattress saying, we're going to sell this to you at bargain prices, you'll learn how to sell through telling a story that is impactful, that gets someone to move. Think about the stories that you've heard. Think about the things that in your life or that coach's life that brought them to where they are, and that can tell a story based upon a specific occurrence that will get someone else in that audience to move. The art of storytelling is what most of these coaches should be dynamic at, right? And so it's just the art of selling without selling. It's the art of storytelling to sell instead of having a pitch. Yeah. And so I would just say, hey, look, let's refocus and reframe the discussion. I'm going to tell you it's about getting clients. You're going to talk about a story. Tell a story that will get someone to move to use the services that you know they need.
Yeah.
And then you go from there.
Yeah. That's great. Yeah, that's something I was like, that's really, really key when you're talking about selling with stories. Because a lot of them don't know how to utilize that yet. And then, you give them a framework to do that. Then a girl got like 35,000 views. She has 55 followers. I'm like, just tell your story, man.
Well, and here's what I'll tell you. I would say that anyone who is coaching should go and do one of two things, probably both. Go join Toastmasters and learn how to speak, right? Because again, selling without selling. Learn how to speak. Learn how to speak. Learn how to not say right? All the things that you learn in public speaking. Secondly, go take a storytelling class. As a coach, again, your job is not to tell and to get someone to do. Your job is to ask questions and to paint a picture that gets someone to ask questions of themselves to determine if they're in the right place or not. And so that requires you to be able to tell a story that opens someone's mind to get them to think about things that they possibly didn't think about before. So every coach should be adept at that.
Wow. Wow, that one's really great. Wow, that's really great. Yeah, because that's really cool.
I mean, you think about it. I mean, in the end, if you're not Look, you're right. By the way, coaches shouldn't go out and make commercials. It's not the same.
Yeah.
So how do you then get a client? You don't, I mean, if you're not willing to go say, hey, come be a client. Hey, you need, oh my gosh, your life is crap. You need a life coach, right? You're the worst salesperson I've ever seen. You need a sales coach. That's not how that works.
Yeah.
It works by telling a story, having a message, giving value consistently. And then whether they reach out to you or you reach out to them, at that point now it's just a conversation instead of a sales pitch.
Yeah. That's really what it comes down to for me. I'm like, okay, cool. If you don't want to do the active verbs, you don't want to talk to, you don't want to reach out, fine. Let's just put out your message, have enough of them come who are going to follow your content for a while, build a community, and they just start reaching out to you. Okay, cool. Now we're not selling no more. Okay. Are we good now? And they're like, yeah, we're good. And I'm like, okay,
cool. I'll say this though, once again, a coach is a business owner.
Yeah.
And as a business owner, the business owner's got to at some point be confident with saying, hey, I think you should sign here. Because you know as well as I do, if we wait for everyone to come and say, hey, give me that paper so I can sign, you're going to be waiting forever. So that would be something that a lot of these coaches need to, have some training on, by the way, right? Is, okay, you're not going to be, if you're waiting for someone to come to you the way that they come to Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
People go to Tony Robbins, but Tony Robbins has spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting a message out there, writing books, doing speaking tours, everything else, in order to be as known as him so that people will reach out to him to buy his stuff. Most of these coaches are not going to ever be there. So they're going to have to become adept at figuring out how to say, hey, see this paper right here and see this dollar amount right here? That's what I'm worth. Sign right here and let's go. Right? I mean, and it is one of the most difficult things for a coach to learn, but it is a necessity.
It's so funny. Like when I do some of the consultations, I can kind of tell out of the ones who are already successful or are going to be successful based on the language. Like I had one lady I was doing an interview with, and she was like, yeah, man, consultations are fun, man. You know, we're just talking, and I just tell them the price, they just pay me money. And I'm like, and that's why you're good, you know?
Yeah.
It's
conversation.
Man. Yeah. It's crazy.
But you also know, but it's funny too, though. I have to realize that not everybody is me.
Yeah. Not
everybody's you. Not everybody's willing to hop on a call and feel comfortable without a script. Not everybody is that way. It doesn't mean that they would be bad coaches.
Yeah.
It's just not everybody has the ability to process information with the speed that's required when you're having a conversation that is a bunch of riffing, right? You're just riffing. And I tell you what, you got to be pretty confident. You got to be pretty confident.
That's so, that's so weird, because it's like or just fail at enough times until you develop it, right?
But think about it. That many failures develops a confidence.
Oh yeah, true.
Think about it, because okay, I failed doing that, not doing that. I failed doing that. I'm going to do it this way this next time. It comes again. Oh yeah, 2 and 2. I remember now. So that is an offshoot of a failure. By the way, I don't wish failure on anybody. I'm not like that. But it is, confidence comes from that kind of failure if you allow it to.
Yeah. It's just weird. It's interesting, right? Because the things, it's almost like the biggest thing I've been dealing about is like language. Failure to some people, is a destination, it's a final. For me, failure, I think that's really important,
Well, and I think part of that's because we live in this self-help culture that tells people, I'm going to sound like a jerk, tells people that you can do anything you want, that you're never a failure until your last breath comes out. And I don't believe those things. Here's what I believe. I think that you're a failure until you do the next thing that you succeed in.
Yeah.
And I really do. I mean, think about it again. Who should I think about? Let's think about Tony Romo for the Dallas Cowboys. I'm a big Cowboy fan.
Mm.
Tony Romo, by all accounts, had a great career.
Mm.
Never won the Super Bowl. People said that he, failed in big situations. People call his career a failure. Was it a failure? One, by the way, that's all in the eye of the beholder. Mm-hmm. But per standards of, did you win a Super Bowl? Yeah, it was a failure to not win a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. Now, was it a failure as a career? No. So I think that you look at those things, right? And when you start talking about failures, when I say I had 13, 14, 15 different failures, did it mean that I was personally like this terrible failure? At a certain point, you become one. Mm-hmm. But a failure in business doesn't mean failure on a whole, but it's still a failure. And so one thing I don't like are people who talk about failure as anything other than that. Yeah. Look, again, I'm going to go back to sports. If the job was to win and you lose, you didn't succeed, you failed, right? Does it mean that the team is a failure as a whole? No, but in that moment you failed. It was a failure. And so I think that from a coaching standpoint, I see failure all the time. You think about like from a sales coaching standpoint. Yeah. Salespeople fail all the damn time. I mean, if the average closing percentage for most industries is like 20%, you're a failure 80% of the time.
Yeah.
But you can win 20% of the business and as a whole be a success and not a failure. So I guess it's a mindset, right? But two, I don't think we should sugarcoat things and say, this is not a failure, or that's not a failure, or you're not a failure until this. To me, life is made up of a ton of different little circumstances that make one giant life. Mm-hmm. And just because there's a failure here and here and here and here and here doesn't mean that the life is a failure.
Yeah.
And we have to understand that there's a way to look at that is positive. Mm-hmm. And I don't think enough people do. I think that self-help has really hurt us in that regard.
Let me ask you this. So what is your vision for either your business or your life, if they're separate or if they're together,
I think business is personal, so I think it's all together. What's my vision? Like long-term, like what do I want to do? What do I want to look back at? Is that what you're kind of asking?
I don't know. It can be it can be like a year from now. It can be 20 years, 40. I don't know. What's your vision?
I want my family to be comfortable. I want my legacy to be one of that my kids look back and say, I don't know necessarily what my dad did, but he was always a good person and he always helped people. I want them to see that. I think that money comes, and it doesn't mean, again, I love making money. I think most of us do, but I don't want the legacy to be on a dollar amount. I want it to be on what they see. In my vision for it is to be at a point where we're able to teach people how to gain control of their businesses. Because I think if they control their business from a sales standpoint, from a consultative standpoint, their personal life is exponentially improved. Yeah. And so the vision for that would be to help as many people as we can.
Okay. So it's an interesting question, right?
Yeah.
So when you're basically either doing your videos or you're doing your message to the market, are you choosing your words based on the particular audience that you're trying to get, or I'm going to say what I'm going to say and the people who are with me are just going to come to my side, everybody else?
Yeah. So I'm going to answer that by saying something else first. I had someone ask me a very similar question about 6-8 months ago. And they were like, hey, you get a lot of engagement and people tend to like it. And it seems like you do pretty well on your posts. And, do you kind of gear your discussion? And my answer to him is the same answer to you. I'm not smart enough, I don't think, to do that. I don't think I'm intelligent enough to know what to say, when to say it in order to make someone like me or not. So no, I tend to say what I'm believing and feeling at that moment.
Yeah.
I'll say this. I did try at the very, very beginning of doing content on social media to figure out what is it that someone wants to hear in order for the most people to see it, and then therefore maybe getting business from it. And it couldn't do it. And it wasn't that I didn't know what to say.
Yeah.
It didn't feel like me. I think one of the reasons that some of my stuff has really resonated, especially like the videos, is that I think people can see, even if they don't agree. And by the way, I think a lot of people don't agree many times, but I don't think they ever wonder whether or not I'm saying it just to say it. Right? I don't think people tend to question whether or not I believe what I'm saying. Right? It's not like I say a bunch of inflammatory stuff and it looks like I'm TMZ on LinkedIn. I think most people see it as authentic, whether they believe it or not. And so it's actually what I train and teach people in sales, right? I mean, again, talk about what you believe in. Don't gear your message based upon the audience. And I know that is contradictory to what a lot of people say on LinkedIn. If you want to go viral, if you want to have your message go out more, if you want more followers, then understand what's trending, talk to that, and you'll get, that's boring to me. Right now, if it was about talking about what's trending, all I would talk about was COVID-19.
Yeah.
That's it. Like I would talk about face masks and COVID-19 and Donald Trump and politics. And I don't want to talk about those things. Like we obviously live in a world right now where those things are important, and it doesn't mean we ignore it, but I'm not going to specifically do that because it's what's trending. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about.
Yeah, because then you get better followers and better people on your connection list.
Well, and you know what? It's funny too. So hopefully she's watching. But there's a good friend of mine out of San Antonio, Texas. Her name is Nadia, and she would always get on to me about every one of my posts, like liking what I say. So like everybody's like, "Oh, good job! Oh man, okay, I really agree with this point. I loved this and loved this," and so I'm like begging people to disagree with me. And so I think that I'm actually doing better now because more and more people are disagreeing, which I like.
Yeah.
Because I don't want it to be a message that I'm saying just to get people to say, hey, I like Josh. I'd rather say something that gets people to think about it, and then someone to look at what I'm saying and go, I like that guy. I want to work with him because he's telling people what they need to hear regardless of what they want to hear.
Yeah. So that's a great point. Yeah. Interesting. Well, where can people go and find out more about you?
So, I mean, there's several different websites you could go to depending upon the business. I think the best place is just to go to LinkedIn. You go to linkedin.com/Joshua W. Desha. You find me. And you see my ugly mug up there, and you'll see about a bazillion videos of me talking, and you can easily get a hold of me there.
Okay. Desha is spelled Desha. No
Correct.
Y.
No Y at the end. Come on. It's French, but it's not really. I think it's Cajun. So just think of it that way.
Yeah. Whenever I read the name off of like the Zoom, I always get so scared that I'm going to like see an H and say something wrong. Like nerve-wracking.
I'll give you a funny story. I did a webinar, it's like 6 or 7 months ago, and it was a pretty big one. And I think there were a couple hundred people on it. And the host of it, who was interviewing me, asked me like 5 or 6 times. She was like, okay, how do I say it? Okay, how do I say it? And she totally flubbed it as we got on. And I didn't even think about it because no one gets my name right. So, it's all good, man.
Excellent. I really appreciate your time. It was a great conversation.
Yeah.
I took a lot out of this. So I'm really glad.
I really appreciate you having me.
Excellent. And if you guys want to get more interviews from people who are moving forward in their life and helping other people do the same, I recommend that you go click on the link either above or below this video to go join my group. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this video as much as we enjoyed creating it. Have a great day, guys. Talk to you soon and see you later.
Bye, y'all.